What is up, everybody? I'm Jaso. You normally catch me on Friday nights with our campaign, our homebrew D&D 5e campaign that we play here on Roll20, but we're actually doing a little bit of a special episode or maybe even series where because of everything that's going on right now and because my buddy Slim slash husband slash Brian is also looking to dig into the Roll20 program, probably because of the things that are going on right now, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into Roll20. So if you guys have questions about how the system works, if you've dipped your toes in or want to get a better understanding of how to wrap your head around a virtual tabletop, if you're usually used to playing in person with your buddies face to face, it is a little something to get used to, but ultimately I think you'll find it to be very advantageous and in some cases even more immersive than playing together with your friends face to face. I know that's a hard bar to meet, but if you'll stick with me, I think you'll be able to see that it's actually a pretty cool tool. So I'm joined tonight by my buddy Slim, who plays Ringkaz, the Lizard Folk Gunslinger, in our Friday night Weird and Wild D&D 5e stream, and we're gonna basically dig into the Roll20 platform. We're gonna start with the very basics. As this is titled, this is Roll20 for Dummies. It's definitely gonna start off like you have no idea. You're just starting to visit the Roll20 site, and then we'll slowly take you through because I think you've dipped your toes into it a little bit. I think, right, Slim? Kind of playing with the system.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of time to look through some of the stuff, and I've watched a few people online go through some of their DM segments on how to run Roll20. But other than that, I mean, I've been literally playing for like, what, 3.5 years now with you on the other side, just as a player, and I've been trying to get used to everything that's in there. There's so much still involved on player side with so much you can do on here that, I mean, it's just been D&D for us. I did play a little bit of uh, I think it was a Savage World system with a friend for a bit. Actually, Heroes in chat with us. But other than that, I'm on one side of the coin here.
Yeah, I similarly did the same thing back when we were playing another person on our party for our Friday campaign, Luke. He was a DM for years, but finally wanted to do his own custom built campaign that he was doing. So we played in that from probably 2000 and probably like 11 all the way to around 2015. It was a long campaign, and similarly, we started in person at a table looking face to face. But then when he shifted out of state, we all switched over to this Roll20 platform. And it was interesting, but even after all of those years, I still didn't really fully understand all the tricks, all the things that were happening, how he was moving pieces, how the map was changing. And so it's interesting to be able to step behind that curtain and see what really goes on behind all things. Now, just up front before we dive in, I do want to point out I am not going to try and convince you or dissuade you to use Roll20. If you find there are other programs out there or platforms that you prefer to use, or to you think that there's some things with Roll20 that are inferior, that's totally fine. But for me and myself, I have only used Roll20 as a digital tabletop platform. So I'm going to show you Roll20. I'm going to remain relatively system neutral. We play D&D largely, and I've run Call of Cthulhu in it before. But everything that you need to really get set up and get going is going to be pretty system neutral for us to show you. But yeah, just like I said, I couldn't do any comparison with anything else if I wanted to. So you may, if you have experience, find that some things are easier or maybe tougher than compared to other platforms. But I couldn't tell you. I use Roll20. It does what I need it to do. I've enjoyed it, and so that's why we're gonna dig into this one here. Now, as we're going along, obviously it's going to be me and Slim going over some stuff. I basically want to present this as a tutorial in some ways to most of you guys, as well as being one-on-one with him, taking his questions and stuff like that, trying to walk through the process. But if any of you guys in the chat, heroes, thank you for hanging out with us. If any of you guys in the chat want to stop in, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to throw them our way. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat as we go over some of this stuff. I'll try to answer as I go along here. And if you miss any of this, if you want to follow along, I suggest right now, take a second to pop up Roll20. If you haven't already, even as someone who's a free member, you don't have to own, you don't have to have paid anything. There are subscription services with the Roll20 system, but you don't have to pay any money to be able to start your own campaign, to begin digging into how everything works. I did it similarly. I started off with a free account just so I could really get my feet dipped into it and start understanding it. So if you want, you can follow along. If at any point you find yourself lost or anything, don't worry. This is definitely going to be a VOD as well as a YouTube upload, so you can always go back through again, or if you just want to rewatch to make sure you did everything right, that's fine too. So Slim, for you, I'm assuming you already have at least created a campaign and maybe taken a look behind the curtain at the stuff that's in there?
I am at the base page just to create a new one. I was going to create a new one on here from the beginning up, just basic title, because to be honest, I know I mentioned it to you that I thought about a couple of my subscribers and viewers, and maybe a couple of you guys hosting a game or two in the future to get used to it. Because I've DM'd a bit in real life and I've been playing forever, but definitely a different experience on here.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a change in terms of getting used to playing on something online. A lot of people maybe have that tactile sensation of wanting their own character token that's something they can touch, and watching a battle mat or 3D area. So it is a bit of a difference. But as I was mentioning before, I think once you learn the systems of Roll20, and truthfully, I mean, if you learn Roll20 and you want to take that and move on to some other virtual tabletop, then completely understandable, and it probably will work for you. But I think you'll find that playing virtually, although you may not be face to face, which is a little bit of a disconnect, there is systems built into Roll20 as well as plenty of other platforms, Discord, stuff like that. You know, Zoom now, that's a big one. They all have video chat. You can all see each other. You may not be in the same room, but if you get along with your friends, if everyone feels comfortable, then it to me really is not all that different from being in the same room with one another. On top of the fact that with Roll20 or any other virtual tabletop system, you can do things that you couldn't in a typical sit-down face-to-face setting. Now what I mean by that is, yes, you can use colored maps and stuff for your face-to-face campaigns, but with this it offers the ability for you to have things set up, for you to throw down things on the fly, slap down character tokens that have art to them, play music in the background, create effects that have animations to them. The level of immersion is pretty exciting, and I think once you wrap your head around it, if you are able to get a grasp of it, I think especially as a player, you'll get a better understanding and appreciation for what your DM does if they're using Roll20 or something similar. But especially as a DM, you'll be able to take advantage of that stuff, and I think you'll really be able to elevate stuff for your players that is actually really nice. So
Agreed.
Before we really jump into the very basics, I want to go over a few things, some resources that Roll20 has. Now, Roll20.net, when you go there and take a look at the page, it's going to give you that nice homepage that you can take a look at with the features and everything like that. As I mentioned before, there's a couple resources that you can take advantage of that you don't need to have paid a dime for, and you don't have to pay money unless you really feel the need to. The first thing I wanted to mention, and if you hear any noises in the background, that's my dog trying to viciously bash through this closed door to try and hang out with me, despite the fact that I specifically closed it to try and drown out the noise out there. So it's a trade-off. immediately, without needing to pay any money or anything like that, you're going to immediately have access to what is called the Roll20 compendium. And that's just straight up, I'm showing you my full browser here, roll20.net/compendium. That gives you access to, now I know you guys may have heard of a number of different things, especially if you're a player of D&D. And that's what I'm going to largely focus on because that's what I am the most used to. But you guys will notice as I scroll through here, there are a lot of different things. Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, Starfinder, Fate, Kids on Bikes. There's plenty of things. Now, any of these that you click on, you may be used to stuff like D&D Beyond, and you may have balked a little bit at the price at that, or tried to get into it only to find that it's got a little bit of a steep buy-in to really be able to access that info. And there are pieces of content similarly on Roll20 that are piecemealed out to D&D Beyond, but the standard editions for each of these systems, besides, excluding maybe whatever extra content has come out in the year since, if you're just looking for the base rules for something and you can always build on that later, everything is here for you. When you go into the 5th edition, you can access all the basic rules, and then if you want to add on top of that, as you can see here on the browser, it's got everything from the very basic player's handbook all the way through Xanathar's guide. You can see all of the supplements that have come out in the years, as well as Roll20 has gotten popular enough to where they'll have the newer supplements, things like popular Critical Role content like the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount that only recently came out. That's immediately here on the site, and I'm pretty sure they probably have pre-orders where you can get ready and have content ready to roll when I believe it's the Theros campaign that's going to be coming out. It's built into here, and what that gives you, I know you're kind of thinking, well, it's usually a book, so what is it here? This gives you not only content from the book, but it builds in all of the ingredients that you would need to be able to take those monsters that are in the monster section of one of those supplements and just easily be able to take that monster, throw it onto your campaign tabletop on any of the maps. It immediately assigns all of those hit points, all of those stats, all of that information just on demand. It's all there, as well as you being able to access all of that info straight from inside your campaign if you need to. So it's a great supplement to have, and it's a great way for you to be able to add in things. It's a little, how should I say, unfortunately priced, because they're wanting to charge you the same exact price as the actual, usually hardcover book yourself, which is understandable in a sense because you're getting the same exact amount of information and content from the books. But I just wish there was some way where you could, I'm okay with the full price, I just wish there was some way that you could avoid double dipping, because I know a lot of, not only D&D fans but tabletop fans in general prefer to have the actual physical book in their hands. And even I'm still the same way, where if I see a good thick book full of content, I like to actually, it's just a nice coffee table piece. And I really wish there was a way to own that without having to then essentially buy the same book to have it online. Maybe they'll come up with something in the future, and maybe there are options out there that I'm not aware of. But as far as I know, you will have to shell out if you're looking for something. But all of the base rules for all of these campaigns are here. You can see as I'm just looking through the basic Dungeons and Dragons, you have all the rules here, the basic races, classes, spells, items, monsters by name, type, challenge rating, everything that you need to get you going. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, which I think is really cool that they have it on here, because I have double dipped. I've bought the Player's Handbook and a bunch of the books in person when they first came out for 5th edition, like at the beginning, book by book for the first 4, and then slowly started to pick what content I wanted. So I got a stack 10, 15 books, and then I went back and bought them through D&D Beyond afterwards, and so I could use them virtually with everybody and share them, with my groups and stuff. But I think that's the best thing about Roll20 is, even if you need if this is all you're going to do, if you're stuck in the middle of the nowhere, or if you're in another country playing with, us, we're playing coast to coast with some of, the players in our group, it helps to have those resources here. But like you had said, there's so many resources within it and outside that can just be easily implemented into here that, I mean, we've seen you use quite a few times, and I think that's one of the best parts about using it on Roll20.
Now here, as you mentioned, that there's some physical game guides that come with a code inside for a digital version, which is pretty awesome. Do you remember what any of those were? My only thing is the only slight issue, and I don't really want to get into like controversial topics in terms of going over the tabletop stuff, but buying for the physical book and then buying pretty much for the same price for the digital content on D&D Beyond, and then having to potentially pay that again for the Roll20 stuff is a bit steep. And it really just sort of comes down to, at that point, what you need that stuff for. If you are a very big face-to-face, in-person D&D player, you're obviously going to want the actual physical book, and you may want the access to be able to go from your laptop or your phone or tablet to access on D&D Beyond. So those may be the more important options for you. If you are someone who does a lot of online play, if you don't necessarily have someone close to you that you could sit down with and play, and you find yourself doing a lot of stuff where you are playing with friends over the internet or people you've met that you enjoy playing with, then it may side towards you just skipping out on those two and just specifically buying the Roll20 content, because that would give you everything you need, all of the content that you'd find in the book, but then everything plugged into Roll20 in terms of maps, the characters, the tokens of the monsters and stuff like that that you can place into your games. That just allows for that almost pretty easy drag and drop. So here, as you said, I don't call currently, I know it's for the newer stuff, like past 5-ish or so years. Well, that's good. If they're doing that, then that's awesome. So you should definitely, I would suggest looking into that. If you guys are just getting into the virtual tabletop stuff, you may be used to just buying the physical books, but if you're trying to really get your mind wrapped around potentially moving into the virtual tabletop space, try to check before you go and buy any of these books and see if they have a digital code that may help you out, because you can customize your game any way you want. You could take all of the content in a supplement like Descent into Avernus and just manually add that in. There's no issue with that. I do it with a lot of supplements. I'll take pieces that I like and add it in. But if there's a way for you to have some type of discount in terms of being able to then go to virtual tabletop like Roll20 and say, hey, I wanted the physical book, but I really do love playing with my friends over the internet because we don't live together, then I would see if you can find some type of code or some way to get something a little bit off. That way you're not having to double dip.
Which I'm an avid Kickstarter follower, me and the wife are, and I've noticed that a few of the backer goals now for some of those are for Roll20 or are for virtual content. I mean, some of them have specifically said plugins that you can drop in for either there or other, tabletop and virtual systems, which is really nice that they're already uploading there or having easy plugins to where you could just drop it into your system on Roll20 just a little bit easier than, having to fight and fuss through it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of outside tools too, even that aren't necessarily officially or affiliated directly with Roll20 that give you lots of options. So just something to think about. Take a look through, and of course, again, I'm saying all of this and showing you things from Dungeons and Dragons, but you could also easily jump into something completely different. You can go into Call of Cthulhu. And now, for example, this one here, you may not find that everything is immediately available to you. For example, Call of Cthulhu here, you would have to actually purchase that rulebook. So I may have to step back and say that you might not find that all of the basic rule books are contained here. That may depend on the particular publisher. So take a look. You may have to, another thing to consider when you're looking through this stuff is depending on what type of tabletop game you're wanting to play, you may want to consider getting into it on Roll20 and just taking a look at that price and thinking about, hey, do I largely play this online? Because if so, I may want to just actually buy the digital version of this so that I have it built into this virtual tabletop system instead of owning the physical thing, or get both, whatever you prefer. Just something to keep in mind as you go forward.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that content is there, and it's something you can take a look at with, I'm pretty sure you don't even need to be logged in to do it, but even if you need to, a lot of that content, maybe not all of the basic rules for every single tabletop game, but a large majority of it hopefully should be, or a good handful should be available to you to at least take a look at and thumb through, at least the basics. So that's something to consider. Now, if you are needing help with Roll20, if you find yourself running into an issue where you can't find an answer for it, there is a pretty in-depth Roll20 help center that has support that'll walk you through various areas. I know for myself, I actually, you will learn a lot. I think my biggest thing I could suggest to people to help them learn virtual tabletop systems is to first be a player in a game. Because you will learn things without even necessarily really knowing the background machinations of what's going on back there. You'll at least get a grasp of probably what's happening and what your DM is doing. And you'll find that as you shift over to the Dungeon Master or Game Master side of things and go behind that curtain or screen, you'll find that a lot of the systems, again, at least for Roll20, because that's the only thing I really had experience with, is very intuitive. And it'll especially be intuitive to you and easy to understand if you've already been a player in a campaign or two. Spending time with it, you'll figure things out. I largely went from being a player in Luke's campaign and switching over to the DM side of things, and largely with the help of the Help Center, figured all of this out myself. I maybe had a small couple questions here and there that I would run across my previous DM, but largely you can mostly figure things out. You may have some questions of like, hey, I'm trying to figure out dynamic lighting and how to get it to work and make sure everyone can see the distance that their characters need to see, whether someone has special vision or is holding a torch or something similar. But that is all largely easy to find and wrap your head around in the Help Center. I would actually suggest just kind of taking some time before, not necessarily you, Slim, but anyone who's just new to this, and just run through and just take a look at the options here. It not only goes over things in pretty good detail, but offers a number of pictures that you can directly follow along with when you have your campaign open in a separate window.
I do have to say, playing like as long as we have now, not only you as a DM, but also the system itself, Roll20 said. I know, I think it's like pro membership, and some of the subscription ones will give you early access to some of the new stuff that they're testing ahead of time, but just like the spell effects and the dynamic lighting, some of the layers and stuff, like I know you've tested and used more, but it seems like anytime that something new comes out, you're willing to give it a shot, and they've just grown a lot over the past couple of years. I know there's plenty of media and platform for tabletop games now. I mean, it's blown up, so it's just cool to see how much they've changed over the years and pushed. So, I mean, the FAQ's actually been kind of helpful, because I've looked at a few of those things to see what they were doing, and even on their Twitter or social media to see what they're coming up with ahead of time.
If there is a lot of unfortunate things happening right now in terms of what's going on out in the world, especially with a pandemic, but if there is a positive, it's that making things like this type of virtual tabletop system a go-to for a lot of people, because they may be having to try and keep distance from friends, family members doing their part. It adds a lot of eyes to a system like this, and in turn brings a lot of traffic to a site like this, and allows the developers and the people who are behind it the opportunity to see those influx of people and then want to really jump on that, surf and ride that wave to add these new things and flesh out and try to just carve the best system that they can so that they retain that player base. So now is a perfect time if any, to really dive into it, because I'm sure systems like this that are able to be accessed over a variety of different platforms and ways through your tablets or phones and stuff like that is a big boon right now, not only to the people who run this, but also to players alike who are looking to still
Oh
connect
yeah.
with their friends.
I mean, we've been playing again. I hate to say it again, we've been playing a while. There's some games you come into. Oh man, it's been a long day. I'm just tired. You play, you go through the motion occasionally, but you're still there. You know, you're involved. You're engaged. You're having fun. But the past, I'm not a super social person. I mean, I am, but I don't go out too much outside of work and hanging out with a few of my friends and stuff. And the past 2 months, I've looked forward more to this than I feel some of even our biggest games and biggest nights. Even if I know that we're going to spend half our time shopping and just doing a little RP in town, or a long battle, I'm really excited to do this. And I've actually seen a few of my friends personally that I played with and a few others talk about, maybe I should mention my parents, my brother, my sister, anybody to come at least watch once and check it out. But like you said, with the craziness that's going on, it's been really good. And I mean, I know we don't live too far from each other, but with weather or whatever's going on, it's definitely a lot easier now with having access to this to be able to play with, like you said, people across the country, across the city, across the world. It's really nice. Plus, I feel like you can have a more consistent game, because that's one of the things I've noticed with tabletop over the years. I've had campaigns that will go 10, 15 games strong, and then so and so has to move or is busy or has a kid or just don't want to play anymore, and you lose that traction, you lose that steam, and that story kind of falls to the wayside.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. You may want to, just even if you are very used to meeting with your same friends that you've known for 10 years or more and sitting down in a face-to-face game, it may be advantageous just to have the knowledge of a system like this in your back pocket, because as Slim mentioned, things change. We live in the digital age, and people are likely to move for jobs. They may find opportunities elsewhere. Things may happen in their lives. People may drift apart, but that doesn't mean that your game has immediately stopped, because now we have, virtual tabletop platforms like this where you can still stay connected. And you could, for example, a perfect example here, as I was mentioning, Luke, our previous DM, essentially moved out to San Francisco with his wife, and in that instance, that 20, 30 years ago may have been a situation where we just don't play D&D with him anymore. But now, because we understood how to use a system like this, we just transitioned over. And truthfully, the way it feels to me is it's like we're sitting together in person, even though he is across the country.
Agreed. I mean, that's listening to some music the other day. A lead singer of a metal band said, "Remember, guys, this is physical distancing, not social distancing. It's not even just for playing on here and stuff. It's good to keep in contact with your friends and stuff through all this, because some people aren't handling it well. And I know I've heard from a few people at a local shop that some of them are still trying to meet up through all of this, and one or two of the players are like, guys, I don't feel safe, or I don't want to cause a problem and so forth. And I mean, like I said, my two physical groups that I meet up with once a month, it's been 2 months. I mean, I asked him, I said, I keep dropping stuff like, hey, what'd we do last time? Because I don't want to lose that steam, because one of these games we've been playing like a year now, at least once or twice a month. And the other one, we only get a couple in, and I've got a lot written, and I don't want to waste stuff that I've worked really, really hard on, or waste their time and think that, hey, we we could be playing right now and we're not, which it's been kind of hard with everything going on. But that's why I'm really excited to get into a little bit more of this with you, and on Fridays try and take more notes.
Yeah, there's not a ton of buy-in to get into this, just a basic microphone and access to the internet to get to the Roll20 page. That is the basic fundamentals that you need. Video camera is optional. Just moving past the idea of everything that's going on with the COVID stuff, just in general, if you know, talking about the advantages of Roll20, if you're someone who may be a little bit averse to social settings, maybe you get anxiety or something like that, you have the ability to feel the freedom of sitting in your underwear in your room and playing with others. And whether you want to be on camera, that's up to you. You don't have to be. And then that gives you the freedom to not only play and not have to necessarily worry about those anxieties, but also in games like this, when you're trying to convey a character and you want to use stupid voices, it may be difficult sometimes, especially if you're with people you know, aren't too acquainted with. Maybe you just met them to play this game, but they're not necessarily people you know well, and you want to do, you know, a little tiny gnome voice, and you're thinking, I would never be able to do this in person around these strangers, but here they don't even see your face if you don't want them to, so you can just ham it up. It's a great system.
I mean, 20, 30, 40 years ago, uh, it was pencil, paper, and maybe one book. I mean, you didn't even need to, because, you know, as long as somebody understood what was going on. My first DM, oddly enough, was also named Jason, would do those every now and then. We'd get together and be like, all right, we're not playing our characters today. No books, no nothing. He'd be like, all right, you're in a room, you're doing this. What are you guys doing? He'd have one dice for himself, just to be fair, on, you know, like rolls for stuff. And that was it. And we'd go through it. Modern day age, that, you know, everyone has access to a computer for the most part. Like you said, it's a computer. That's all you need. I mean, I know a lot of groups that just use this and follow what the DM's doing on here with nothing else. And
Mm-hmm.
you were talking earlier about immersion, and I've hit this point with a few of my friends in the past 2 weeks. I don't feel there's certain times, like, the music and stuff always hits, you get pumped. I've tried to have music in my real games, it helps. It's definitely a different feel from virtual to there, but I say to anybody who is a purist and traditionalist who happens to run across this, us talking about this, that only plays pen and paper, give it a shot sometime. Because honestly, like I said 2 weeks ago with that Wasteland Dragon, the noises I heard from that thing, I still was. I mean, I was looking around the room. I kept thinking that it was windy or raining outside. Now it's just the wind sounds you had going. I mean, the dynamic lighting. I think the creepiest thing was me being stuck in one spot with Fa and not seeing anything, and hearing the other players describe to you what's going on outside. They're like, it's a dragon. Well, what kind? It's reddish. It's this. It's, I don't know. Oh, there's a thing over here. Who are you talking to? Oh, we found one of the. I mean, that's. I mean, was you said mindscape, or I forgot the phrase that you use. The power of imagination in there. It's just
Theater of the mind, yeah.
theater of the mind. That's it. I mean,
and
it's.
and you can do that. You could do that, but sitting face to face with other people. You could pull those players aside and be like, "Here's the picture of the thing you see," and describe it. But it's just so much easier with the way that this is set up to still essentially deliver that same feeling of playing something face to face with others, where some people may know more than other players do, but you are so much easier. You know, you're not sitting face to face with people and you're like, hang on, let me turn around and hit these buttons here so I can play this one sound effect, or let me pull these players aside and show them this one thing. No, it's happening all at the same time.
We
With the
used to.
dynamic lighting, they're seeing their own things. With the music, you just hit it. No one maybe even knows you started a track until it really starts kicking in.
We have a rule. We, you know, pass a note to the DM if there's something we wanted to do, you know, that might surprise the group. I mean, we were immature kids at the time, but he started making a rule. You get like 2 or 3 pieces of paper a game. In case there's something you want to tell me that you want to do, or something that you have to ask, you know, you don't want everyone else to know. I mean, we can do that sometimes. I've asked you a question or two, or say, hey, I wanted to do a thing um, in game, and I can just DM you a message in there through the chat system, which is really nice. So I don't have to use, you know, messengers or anything else, which has helped out. Or, you know, we've had plenty of times where emergencies come up. You can not break the story or the train and be like, you know, hey, I gotta go. I'll be back in 5-10 minutes. It's not like, oh, guys, put the game on pause. I need to hear everything. You know,
Yeah, there's no need to hit a pause button and move players aside. If you have something to whisper to the DM, you don't have to pull them aside or try to, train a note through multiple people over to them on a sticky pad. There's none of that. It's all built into the system. So everything you would be doing in a face-to-face game translates through something like Roll20. It almost does it slightly more seamlessly. Again, it takes some getting used to because you're not sitting there with your friends. But the way that this is set up, especially when you add in the fact that you have video chat with everyone and can see their pictures right next to the mat with your tokens and everything that you're looking at, really does build that seamless vision that once you get comfortable with it, it really doesn't feel too different than being in the same room with them. Now, moving on from the help center, you're gonna wonder as we move into the actual, and we're gonna really dive in, but I'm just trying to go over the very basics of the Roll20 site and the aspects that you're gonna see that are a part of it. Of course, along with any tabletop game, Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, any of these, you're gonna want all of the same accoutrements that you would in real life. You're gonna want some awesome maps. You want some awesome tokens. You want some cool pictures of things. And you, as I mentioned before, have the free ability to upload pictures, music, all kinds of things that you need to really tailor your campaign, or even if it's just a one-shot, whatever you're going for, you have the ability to tailor that yourself. But there are some advantages, specifically with Roll20, in the Roll20 marketplace. Now, essentially what this is pretty self-explanatory. You have everything that you'd be looking for in terms of tokens, maps, even adventures that you are able to purchase. Almost all tokens, all maps that you're going to find, and the content, of course, because there are so many publishers that are on here, it's going to vary from person to person. You may see some person who has in one of their packs a wealth of content, or someone else you're like, it's not all that much compared to some other people. So you want to curate the types of maps, especially the styles that you're trying to go for. If you're trying to go for a very grim, realistic Call of Cthulhu vibe, you may want to stay away from people who produce art that maybe look more cartoony or unrealistic. So you're going to want to curate your own feed. But the good news is largely the system that is built in with maybe not so much actual adventures or supplements, but at least the maps and tokens themselves is very cohesive, where you will find practically all sets of either tokens or maps are going to run between $4 to about $6 or $7, and that is across the board. So you don't have to worry about, hey man, I really love this one piece of art, but this person has slapped a $20 price tag on it. You're going to find everything for what I consider a sort of bite-sized price of just here's $5 and I can get all of these cool airships or these city harbor battle maps that I was looking for just this part of the campaign that I want to take my players to. None of it, and money may be tough for some people, but I think that's a pretty fair price, especially when you, as I mentioned, curate that feed to find people out there, these artists who may be really giving you a bang for your buck, that may offer you just tons of content for that one single $5 purchase. So it's up to you to really look through and find what people are looking for, or what you are looking for your campaign and your players may be looking for. There is also add-ons to your campaign. Besides all of the things I previously mentioned, we use a number of custom rules. For example, for our Weird and Wild campaign, we use inspiration cards. There is different add-ons. For example, we have board and card games. These are add-ons that are built into the system. So by default, I think even if you have a free account, if you go into your own campaign, you'll notice that on your settings, you have an option to show just a plain deck of cards. And maybe you just want to show that in your normal campaign. Like you guys could sit down and just play a game of, blackjack or something like that. And You can deal cards out, you can recall cards, you can set them face down, flip them up. All of that is directly built into Roll20. So if you're someone who enjoys some of those additional aspects of role playing games, players having the ability to have fun diversions like that, you can build all those again. You can build your own decks if you want to, but it's nice that it's all customly built into the marketplace and easy to bring into your campaign setting if you want.
Which has been a huge help, because I know personally, even in our personal game, my in-person games, that there's one or two games that I've implemented into the world that I can tell you, with 4 or 5 different groups, there's been 2 people each time that, I mean, everyone wants to play, but they've been like, I want to play again. Let's do it again. Having a game within a game within a game. I mean, playing a dice game, a card game inside, saying you roll and do it, I choose this card, I do the thing, is nice and all. But yeah, again, Hero is another one that playing games in general in our games, and that's for making bets and stuff like that, has been huge. Also, like you said, the weird and the critical effect cards are something that I've been wanting to do forever, because we have house rules, and I've had house rules that I've used since I first started playing, but having the cards for just a little bit of an extra twist has been so nice.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, as Heroes mentioned here, he uses his as a type of token for his games, like a reward system, using the fate system, which is acts as he says here like a limit break type of a system that's semi-balanced, which that's really cool too. If you're a person who also likes the idea of being able to purchase these and have them immediately to use in your campaign, but is a little more advanced and wants to, maybe, like for me example, I find a lot of these maps and stuff that I enjoy, but to really want to make sure that they fit in my campaign, I may want to edit them, and for example bring them into Photoshop and maybe use some of the extra tokens I got from that map to add some extra rocks, or to change the color of it to more match the particular area that your players are in. That's, once you buy these, they are yours to use. Not only are they immediately there for you to just plug right into your game, but you can also, under the marketplace, just go to your purchases, and that'll show you everything that you bought before, and you can just download the whole zip folder. So everything is there for you to download. It's not just stuck on Roll20. You can download, edit those. You could print them out to use on your own. Maybe you just want to use a marketplace and still play some in-person games and print out some of those maps or tokens to use. It's definitely something you could do. Under the tools... Oh, go ahead, Slim.
I was going to say, you were talking about that in general, the some of the tokens and stuff you've thrown out. One, not going back to lighting effects and stuff, but there's been a moment or two where you've had, trails of blood or acid or ooze in the game, and being a person who paints miniatures in person, it's hard to have a dungeon tile and then repaint it just for one game or one effect. It's actually been cool. It's kind of misled us sometimes. Like, you see this big trail of blood, the monster's at the end of the hallway, but this veers off to the right. He went there and slinked back around. It's even taken that whole theater of the mind further, because that's been a bit of a different change to the game that I wasn't expecting, and it's been really cool, because it's I feel you have a little bit more control as a DM with some of these tools that you normally wouldn't in real life, because you do have, I'll be guilty of it myself. I've had moments where I'm like, clearly this is a insert monster here. I should prepare this weapon. I should know that it dies to this and this and this, or I should use this in this situation. It's completely changed on me having a different visual. So it's been good for any of you DMs out there who have players who are already prepped and primed and have been playing forever and may know even more about the games that you're in than you. It's a real advantage to be able to have a little bit more of that surprise and immersion through those.
Now, of course, I did mention under your tools you do have the ability to access the compendium. There are things that can be available to you, like the character vault, where you can have everyone build their characters within this system. It's all self-contained if you need to. You can manage your audio, the music. may find that you need a specific song or some particular ambience that you're not able to find on here. And again, we'll go over all this in more detail, but that's all manageable under your tools, so you can find that. Now, under your games, you have the ability to have a number of options. You can go and join a game. There is all kinds of posts of people looking for games, the criteria that they're looking for, stuff like that, what type of game they're playing in, whether they're using video cameras or not. So if you're someone who's wanting to get into this more as a player and doesn't necessarily want to DM or know anyone who will, you have the option to, almost like a local listings type of deal, look through, see who's trying to look for other players. There's plenty of DMs out there. Again, we're in the digital age. It's amazing. There are plenty of DMs now. The hunt for DMs at least has been somewhat subsided by the fact that we have access to the internet, because there are plenty of people now who want to run a game and need a proper set of players, and they're going to post that and they're going to look for people, and you have the opportunity to try to get in with a group that you may find good and with settings and a particular campaign and rules that you like and play in those. It's definitely something to check out. Now here under games, you can see my list of what I have here, and other than going over those broad ranging things that we did just over the past stream here, which you will find all connects back once we jump into the actual campaign, when you're inside of your campaign building things up. All of that will tie back into it. But before we jump right into my campaign, there's one other thing I wanted to go over now that I've kind of mentioned some things in terms of the tools, the supplements you can buy, the marketplace items and music you can upload, is the Roll20 pricing plans. Roll20 is free to start. You don't have to pay a dime to be able to jump in and build yourself something to really get an understanding of what is going on, how to use the system, and maybe even run a couple games. As you see here, and we'll just go over this and I'll give you my opinion of some of this stuff. You can pay as with most things out there, you can pay monthly, or if you're willing and have the money to be able to pay once a year, then you'll get a little bit of a savings if you want to do that. But if you want to just start out and pay monthly, you can. At this point, I may as well just go yearly. I don't know what I'm doing paying extra monthly. On the basic free plan, what you're getting is 100 megabytes of upload storage. There's no load screen ads. So I guess that's actually something new. I guess they've added in for free players, so they may get some type of adage when they're trying to load up stuff, which doesn't sound terribly intrusive. Let's see. Unlock your subscriber features for all players in the games you create. Okay, I see that. Dynamic lighting, that's a big one. If you want certain players to be able to see areas with their own character's vision while others see their own, that is a lot of fun in terms of immersion. Not required, and there's actually a lot of tools that can mimic that effect, but the dynamic lighting is fun because it is dynamic and will change as character tokens move, and is very interesting, so something to consider. Now you get access to character sheets just with the free base account, just not custom character sheets, ones that you could create from scratch. API access if you really want to get under the hood of the Roll20 system, which it's not even something I've done, and I've DM'd forever now. But you would get access if you were on one of the higher tiers. You don't get that on the free account. Dev server access. I've never found myself in need to be able to have a connection with a dev server, but if it's something you're interested in, you may want to consider upgrading from a free account. Transferring characters between games. If you find yourself or your friends building a, as we call it, a cinematic campaign universe, you may want to transition some characters from others. That is something you can certainly do on the higher tiers. Although if you have built your characters through other means, like just actual physical character sheets or on D&D Beyond, which is what my players use, you don't even need to worry about something like this. There is compendium sharing. You can share whatever rule books that you own with other people, but that depends on the tier that you're at in terms of the options that you have. And you also get access to posts on that looking for group area that I mentioned before. Now there's the plus plan and the pro plan, and you'll see, you guys have probably seen this screen long enough to get a gist of what's going on here. Basically, some of the most important things that I would consider things you want to think about are obviously the upload storage, dynamic lighting, which is a lot of fun, and beyond that, I think those are the biggest features. You will find, and this is actually something that used to be a lot more strict when we talk about upload storage, but now that they have added the ability, it used to be we couldn't use our own custom music. We could select from a number of different platforms, tabletop audio, for example, to plug in their music. It also had a connection with SoundCloud, which was just a true blessing from God himself. But they took that away from us. But they changed that with letting us just upload whatever music we wanted, which is great. And because of that, they said, well, we need to increase the upload storage. So with 6 gigabytes of upload storage, I can tell you guys that I have been running our Weird and Wild campaign for what, 3 years, I think?
I think like 3.5 right now. It's crazy.
3.5 years. I have maybe used half of that. Maybe. So for 6 gigabytes, as long as you are not just throwing in these raw, huge, unnecessary bloated files, the Pro account will serve all of your needs.
Which I'll say, it said I've been a member since 1/22/17, so yeah, about 3.5 years now, ish, give or take a month or two. And I was at a paid plan once per month just to check it out as player side, and just playing here with this game, I didn't need it. Now that's not to say to water down, say, oh, you guys don't need this stuff. I didn't feel I needed it because I came in, I sat down, I played for a couple hours, 3, 4, or 5 hours, and that was it. So I didn't need to have it. But now that I'm on the other side for the DM stuff, I look at it and I'm like, oh, there's a lot more here. Which, again, quick side note to anybody who hasn't DM'd, it's not as scary as you think. And just think about it this way. It's really cool to play your character and have fun with it. Here, you get to play with every character and just a couple other guys playing theirs. Using this as already, or just going over what we've gone through tonight, I feel like we just scratched the surface of what's in here. And I'm, I guess, a little bit hungrier now, even further to dig into some of this stuff and see what I can do with it. Because you had said uploading stuff to here. I know a handful of artists, and I know a bunch of, even my wife has, done graphic design for quite some time. The stuff that, you can create. I know you know quite a bit about Photoshop yourself and use it quite a bit. The things that you can create, upload, and put on here, just imagine if you can't find a miniature of that character that you're trying to use in real life, or you have really awesome character art that one of your best friends gave to you, or your wife got you as a gift or something. Now you could actually put that and share it with everybody,
There are things that I have been able to do with this system that I would never have been able to do to the degree of detail that I could have done in face-to-face stuff, but I'll kind of go over those when we jump in deeper. So if you're looking at this and you're someone who's like, I'm just really looking to dip my toes into it, I may end up DMing a game, I may be a one shot, I may just play around, maybe a couple sessions, and do a free account. It costs you nothing. You have 100 megabytes of storage. A point for you all to remember, and I will bring this up again, but any marketplace purchases that you do through Roll20, as I mentioned before, all of that when you're in your campaign will be easily accessible, and it's simply dragging and dropping onto your map for what you need. Any of those purchases that you do through the marketplace that are a part of your campaign does not count towards your upload storage. So all of the upload storage I have used is only from custom stuff that I've specifically uploaded into the game. Music, tokens, maps. everything that's built into the marketplace, which I have admittedly bought way too much of, is not counted towards your total. So something to keep in mind.
Which I know a few people on the DMs Guild who make content in general from, like I said, Patreon, Kickstarters, and other stuff. I know some of them have stuff inside of Roll20 through, like, Kobold Press, I know is, one who still does Kickstarters for some of their bigger books and content. And that's another tool, I guess, for another time, but that's where I've gotten a lot of my stuff for in person, even for on here talking online, has been a huge use. But to know, I didn't know that didn't add to it either. So that's, honey, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I probably would have hit my limit by now if that was the case. But yeah, you have access to all of that. And if you ever find yourself close to a limit, if you're on the free account and you find yourself having uploaded a lot of stuff, it's simple and easy to access what you have uploaded to help scrub through that. And under your account settings, you can keep an eye on how much you are to your limit and stuff like that. So if you're just trying things out, even if you're DMing a game or two, start with a free account. If you find yourself enjoying things, you want a couple more features, like Heroes mentioned, you want to dive more into dynamic lighting and get that figured out. Maybe you want to have the compendium able to be shared across more players than the standard free options that you have. Give the Plus account a try. For me, I know, being a streamer and having the privilege to have people, sub up through the Twitch, that essentially, as I mentioned before, directly goes back into not only paying for the Pro account, but also paying for the tokens. But again, $10 a month, it's like a Netflix subscription, probably at this point cheaper than Netflix. And something to consider if you're finding yourself getting into the motions of playing a virtual tabletop often with the people that you know.
Yeah, that's the biggest. I think the biggest thing for a lot of D&D and other tabletop games, that is something that I talked about recently with a couple players and even the wife, was it's organization. And again, you can have the most bare bones. You're an elf in the woods with, a human fighter, and that's it. You don't need crazy anything. But to put on, I mean, we live in an age where there's, every month a cool new series or movie. I mean, The Witcher was on Netflix, The Stranger Things, Game of Thrones. I mean, there's so much media out there now that, it influences us that, hey, you want to do a one shot inside that world or whatever. The fact that you can narrow some of it down into here. And I know he said it before, we're not paid by Roll20, we're not sponsored or anything. It's just a really good tool, and I've really enjoyed playing on it. And I think that's, again, why we're doing this tonight, is because it's a lot of organization and it's an easier platform to hop onto for that in general. Like I said, I'm scrolling through the marketplace while we're doing this right now, and I'm looking at some of the stuff, and that's quite a time saver.
Yeah. As Slim mentioned, this I should have pointed it out at the beginning, but we're not sponsored, so I didn't really have to mention anything. But yeah, this is not paid by Roll20. This is just a system that has worked well for me, and I've had little problems with. I'm sure there are deficits that this platform may have that others have fixed, but for me, this works. It's easy, it's quick for other people to get into. You're not having to convince your friends to go on their Steam accounts and download this and open it up. It's just literally telling your friends, anyone who has any type of even if they're on their tablet or something, hey, go to roll20.net and log into the campaign and start playing with us. And it's very easy to do, and I kind of like that ease of use. So something to think about in terms of the subscription plans based on how you typically like to play, the amount of content that you find yourself using here on Roll20. Now, with most of that out of the way, our first hour here was largely going over just some of the broad aspects of Roll20. And again, I'm not a pro at this. I didn't have any way of honestly really figuring out how to go about the steps of explaining this system to you guys. I kind of just am trying to explain what questions or ideas or things in my mind that I would want to go over as a person who doesn't really know this system. So if I miss anything, if you have a question on something that I either didn't cover or maybe didn't cover enough, just throw it in the chat. If you find yourself watching the VOD or on YouTube, just throw it in there and say, hey, this is my name on Twitch. I watched the stream or had a question on this. Could you explain a little better? And I'll either respond or make sure to bring it up in the next stream, because clearly I see that we have not even jumped into an actual campaign yet, and we're already an hour into our discussion here. So I think this is going to go for at least maybe 2 or 3 different sessions, potentially.
That's what I was going to say is I'm excited even for, like I said already, to see what else I can learn from working with you on this. But even, if this works out good and you want to do more stuff on even, creating some of the stuff in other programs to put onto here, or other stuff you use for it, it's really good, because I feel that's another thing is getting into D&D is, we've seen, I'm sure a lot of us have seen the videos of somebody, I don't know, it's, it's at tabletop games, D&D, it's kind of weird, I don't, it's, is it, scary, or I'm not socially, ready to sit down and play with a bunch of people I do or do not know. It's, again, behind the screen, it's a little bit safer for a lot of people too, and there's so much, so much to get into it. Like I said, in person, I like to use music, miniatures, even candles or different foods to help, set the setting for the games. And it's
garlic, lots of garlic.
scare everyone away. So if your DM does use a lot of garlic, you can just say, hey, why don't we check
everyone.
out Roll20?
Now that we have gone over the broad strokes, if you guys are following along, if you want, take some time, create you a campaign, slap a name to it. You can create multiple campaigns. So just name it test, or if that's your main one, give it the name of what you plan to run as your campaign and join that game. You'll have the option whenever you're looking at your profile to look at the different games you have and to join them when you need to. And that's easily done. It'll bring you right into this screen that you see here. The immediate things that you will notice are a couple different things. You will first notice that you have a blank white grid with a number of squares. You have what looks like a toolbar with all kinds of weird icons and options over to your left. You will have a player icon with whatever your account icon is and your name that you have set for yourself down at the bottom. Over on the right hand side, you'll have a weird little blue icon that is a page toolbar, a magnification area here on the right side, your scroll bars, of course, and then you have a couple different options over on the right side. Now when you first log in, on your right side you're going to see the chat. That's where the chat stays. That's where whenever you guys are talking amongst one another with your chit chat, you can post that in there. I have found, talking about the advantages of in-person versus a virtual tabletop like this, that the chat is a great system. I have noticed as I have played in my campaign that you guys are, if for example, if we are in combat and you're waiting for your turn, or if other people are having a moment in terms of role play, you're still able to interact with everyone without being in person and almost kind of doing that thing where you're like disrespectfully like pulling other people to the side and having a separate conversation than what the DM's trying to explain. I've noticed that my players are still able to role play and have fun and almost have a separate role play in the chat itself that doesn't throw me off. It doesn't distract me or anything because it's all held there. None of it's audible. So it's a nice way for your players to be able to communicate with one another without having to talk over one another, which can be something that's already a little difficult when you're trying to play online versus in person.
I'm I was gonna say, I was waiting for you to bring up the chat. I'm super bad about. I link bad gifs, stupid things. all the time. And like you said, there's so many times that I've been sitting at a table playing with people, and the DM's trying to tell a story, but you just want to tell your friend that one goofy thing real quick while you're listening to the DM and staring at him via, through the camera, and you're able to get that quick joke in or reference that thing or say, BRB, 2 seconds, fill me in. it's, I, I take it back. I think that the chat function on here might be my favorite.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting as a DM because I find myself not even paying attention to the chat sometimes, and it's like a whole separate game in the chat. It's really cool to go back and see what you guys were talking about and laughing at in there. That's an interesting idea, heroes, with your dad using, or your old DM using candy, and if you killed the candy, you ate it. Can't do that in the virtual tabletop. That is one of the drawbacks is you can't eat virtual candy, but you could just bring your own candy and do that. That's the other issue is you can't bring snacks to your DM when it's virtual tabletop, but there are plenty of advantages too. Now, most of this looking at this screen is probably pretty intuitive to most of you. What you're looking at here with this grid is going to be where your map goes, where your tokens go, etc. This toolbar is where you're going to have all of your options to use in terms of lighting, in terms of moving characters, measuring distance, drawing things, etc. Down at the bottom, it's not showing my camera because I don't use a camera in the actual Roll20 system, but you could have that turned on if you wanted. And right here where the God mode icon is down at the bottom left would be my face that you'd see down there, which is what most of my players use. Over on the right side, you have the zoom tooltip and the page toolbar here at the top. And as I mentioned, the different pieces that make up your campaign and the details that they entail over on the right side, and we'll go over those. When you first enter, anytime you enter into your campaign, you're always, as a DM, going to get this message right here. And I think even players may see this. This may be individual to anyone who logs in. You're always going to have this green text show up, and it's going to just give you a little refresher. It's going to tell you, hey, if you're not using physical die and you just want to roll in our system, that's all built in, and we're going to just remind you how to do all that. And they'll go over all those tooltips there. Now, if you're someone who wants to move any of this stuff out of the way, if you just want the full screen to be devoted to just the map and the tokens going on, you have this little area right here, this little 3 dash line that you can just touch, and it'll make all of that go away. And then you can just zoom in and immerse yourself deep into the campaign itself. But you usually want to have this open as a player or especially as a DM so that you can go through each of these sections. So before I get in depth in terms of the map, the tokens, and all the toolbar things that we can get into over here, I kind of want to go over the basics that you see here. And I think I'm going to start over on the right side. You have your chat, and all of these icons at the top are where you're going to click to go through different things and take a look at them, find what you need, and whether that's in your art library, your journal that's going to have everything that you can store in terms of notes, characters that the players may have run into, etc., music, collections in terms of your decks and stuff like that, your macros that you build. So let's go step by step. You obviously have your chat, and that's where you can punch in, you can say it as yourself, you can, even if you have other players in your game, if you're the DM, you can switch to someone else and say things as that player, which could be interesting for certain tabletops like Call of Cthulhu and I believe Paranoia. That could be some interesting fun that you could do. In terms of inviting other people, I didn't really go over that, but if you're trying to look to invite other people into your campaign, that's as easy as showing them the campaign link, which you can do from your dashboard of your profile. You'll see all of your games listed that you have, and you can just add a player either by submitting their email or by sharing the actual campaign link, and that will bring them into the fold, and they can see almost all of what you as the DM sees, although you have special privileges and things that you can see that may be invisible or unavailable for them. So moving on in terms of our tabs on the right side, you next have your art library. And this consists for tokens, maps, portraits. You can just sort by everything. It depends on what you like. If you need to find something, you can search by just punching it in here. And there are 2 sections that are part of your art library. There is premium assets and then my library. Now under premium assets, which is the thing that first pops up here, you're going to have a mixture of things that are offered to you by default and things that you purchase in the marketplace. As you can all see, pretty explanatory here. I have my marketplace purchases, subscription sets, and free assets. Now if you're just joining the game under a basic free account, just trying to figure things out, or you're just like, hey, I don't need a ton of upload room, I don't want to pay money, I just want to run a quick one shot for my friends and we can't do it in person, they're going to already give you free assets that you can use. And you'll notice as I scroll through here that it's a pretty decent amount. There's got to be 20 plus sections here that have all kinds of things, and they may not be your art style to your liking. Like for example, these Channel A Chibi Minis are super cute, but they just have no room in any of our campaigns that we use. And I think a lot of these tokens, for example, are really cool and much more akin to a D&D like atmosphere. But as you'll notice, they're a top-down view. And at least for my personal preferences, I prefer to have like an actual framed token of like a character portrait instead of a top-down look, because I want it to, at least for my campaign, and this is all down to personal preference, I want for my campaign to be less about players looking at like a map that they're on, and instead looking through their eyes they would see the face of whoever they're talking to. So that's how I try to do things. But you may find that you just like a top-down view, a kind of scale of war, or a map like this, and there's plenty of assets for you. And I'm sure there's other things than just these top-down views. There should be a couple maps and stuff in here that you can find. And it runs the gamut. Everything from sci-fi to your standard medieval fare. Plenty of items that run the gamut here. With any of this, it's simple as drag and drop. I'm a free user. I go under the free tokens. I'm like, hey, I'm trying to build out this tavern and I need a bench. Drag and drop. There it is. And you can play with it as you go. Along with the free assets from this 3 set of things under premium assets here, if you're a subscriber, for example, I'm on the pro tier, so you will find yourself having access to a number of other things that are just given to you without paying for anything in the marketplace other than just either a pro or plus subscription. You already have access to a number of resources. So if you're not someone who's terribly inclined to be able to use things like Photoshop and stuff, and you are more reliant on content that's already crafted for you, no worries. You should have a lot to either draw from or at least consider using by taking a look at the stuff that's already provided for you, even if you're just a free user. Along with that is, of course, marketplace purchases at the top. And everything, as I mentioned, that you buy in the marketplace, you have access to. You can look at your purchases, you can download the zip folder that has everything. But not only along with that do you have access to it locally on your computer, but when you purchase it and log into one of your campaigns, it is immediately built in for you to access. So this Universe Map Pack 1 that I bought is immediately stored in here and it's ready to go. I have access to all of these things, it's just a drag and drop to bring them in. Now if you're someone who is looking to craft some of your own content, if you want to make some of your own tokens, or if you've scoured Google to just find free assets like a cool tavern map that you want to use that's not a part of any of those things that are under premium assets, that is when you're going to go under your library. And similarly to the way that premium assets is set up, you have the ability to similarly create folders so you can keep everything organized. So as you see for me, and I'm not even a terribly organized person, but I have character portraits, geodesic room icons for ships that are on the main spacecraft that my players use, and general weird and wild stuff that you see here. And you can upload content to that, so you can keep everything organized so that when you're using a particular token or maybe a particular map, it's there for you to grab, and you've uploaded that yourself. You can see right here that it's got the upload area. As soon as you click on it, that'll open up in a separate window, and it's just drag and drop. It accepts JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, and you can just toss it right in. Once it's tossed in, not only does it appear, you can set up your own folders, but if you don't assign it somewhere specific, it'll just appear under your recent uploads. And as you can see, you could pop that out if you wanted to, and as you mouse over each of these individual uploads, you'll see a zoom in of what it's going to look like as you take a look at these things here.
Which I just was scrolling through it myself and looking at some of the stuff. I didn't even notice that there's one on their premium for, it said thaumaturgy assets. So if you guys need cones rays or whatever, I thought you had just stretched those out to create those. That's really cool. Like, what's the radius of a fireball, guys? Right there. Just drag, drop, click. If you're, being a player now, I can, maybe throw a few things to him and say, hey, I found these assets that I might need for my character in the future that might make it easier on you. Because DMs like when you help them every now and then and make their job easier.
But yeah, please help me. I need all the help I can get. Yeah, you'll find a lot of useful tools in here. And not only do you find useful tools for the token assets, but you'll also find useful tools in terms of the toolbar on the left that you can use to help measure, map things out. There are plenty of, when we're talking about that, that's a good point, Slim, because on top of just your standard tokens and maps, there's a lot of helpful tools that you can use. For example, there is a decent amount of things that I own that are part of the marketplace assets that, and I'm trying to find one now, that not only have a area of effect, like a flame blast from a dragon's breath, but a lot of that content will have the normal version, just the art itself, but then some of them will include the art along with the squares that will include the radius. And that's extremely useful for when you're like, I love the way this looks, but I also just kind of want to know how big it's actually supposed to be on this map. You can find marketplace assets that will help do that for you, and so that you can slap it down and just size it to the squares that you find out here on your main map, and it's pretty cut and dry. Now, of course, you want to just double check that typically with making sure that it applies to your whatever tabletop system you're using. But again, because we're using D&D, I can largely be faithful that whatever square size they're giving me is approximate to what I slap down that has one built into it. So a lot of useful tools on top of just the art that you may be looking for. Now, sometimes you may find yourself, while you are in the midst of playing a game, unable to have a token at the ready. Maybe, for example, in one of our more recent campaigns, one of our characters transformed Slim's character Rinkaz into a giant eagle. Now, you may find yourself going, well, okay, I prepared for a lot of things, but I had no idea someone was going to become a giant eagle or a Tyrannosaurus, you should expect that if you're playing Dungeons & Dragons. But if you're playing in any game where there's a wild card, which is most tabletops, you have to prepare for the unexpected. Now, similar to real life, you would just sort of shrug and maybe throw a note or something or a little thing on that character token to denote that they become that. You don't have to just rely on that in this game. There is icons you can place on tokens and things like that, but whether you're in premium assets or, for example, when I'm under the My Library version over on the right side, for example, let's say someone becomes and is changed into a bat in your game. You can punch in bat and search. And what's going to happen is the art library is going to give you a number of options. They're first going to show you things that are from your art library, things that you've uploaded yourself. So it's going to prioritize, okay, he specifically uploaded some bat related things. I'm going to throw that up there just so that he doesn't have to sift through all the icons, because when you're in mid game, it may be easy. Maybe you've uploaded a token of a lizard man and you're like, I want to find that lizard man, but I don't want to sift through all these folders I made. I just want to find that lizard token. You can just punch that in and it'll immediately pull that up. If it is not in your uploads yourself, it's going to next prioritize marketplace purchases. So if you're like, this person just became a Tyrannosaurus Rex and I don't have an upload for that, but I remember buying a marketplace pack that had a T-Rex somewhere in there, you can easily punch that in and look through there. It will then next show you some premium assets. So these are things that you are not able to pull into the game because you have to go to that pack and buy it. But it's a nice way to maybe take a look and say, okay, I can't maybe use this just yet, but maybe for next session I want to go to this Bat Riders by Devon Knight that's part of this pack and look into purchasing that, so I have that token to use next time. So some interesting things there. And one of my favorite things that when you are DMing on the fly you have access to is finally built into the search system using Google is images from the web. Now this is all kinds of content that just keeps on spanning. As you can see, I'm just scrolling and it's just going to load more stuff. And obviously, similar to actual Google, as you scroll through, you start getting to stuff that's less and less related, like bats is not beds. However, it is pretty awesome because if you don't have a bat token uploaded, the first result here on Google is a picture top down of a bat, and I can just immediately throw that in there, and I can't tell you how many times I've done that.
What?
So
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, if you're just playing on the fly and you're like, I just need a bat somewhere in here and I haven't purchased one and I didn't upload one, it's going to already pre-built into it in those search results show you images from Google, and then it's as easy as dragging and dropping them into your game and you'll see them show up. A very useful tool.
This may date me. I feel like I'm in episode of King of the Hill where they're sitting there in Japan. They've got this tiny, like, one bedroom, one bath room for the whole family. Like, man, they sure do live small over here, man. And then they open the door on the last day and they find like a 5-room suite. I feel like I've been using a program that can do a whole heck of a lot more than I've been giving it credit for. Like, I log in, press the button for the dice, draw a circle, kill a thing, and go home, and I'm happy. But I'm like, oh man, I don't want to cut and crop. Honestly, I thought like 95% of this stuff you had already run through Photoshop.
No,
I'm not gonna lie, this isn't.
I mean, admittedly, man. I run a lot of shit through Photoshop, full admittance. But there are times when you guys say that I'm like, I got nothing for. For example, the session. And before we keep on going here, Slim, let me throw this link to you. And if you want to have this open in a separate window, this is the campaign that I'm using.
All right.
That way you can kind of just see what I'm tossing out there and playing with. We had a session where, was it Aesop who got turned into a Tyrannosaurus Rex?
It was me. No, it was Aesop and then it was me. Yeah, both of them.
This was on Neo Gokyo when he had.
That was him. We
were up on some flying vehicles way up in the sky in a futuristic city with skyscrapers, some 70, 80 feet up in the air. One of our players fell, and as they begin to fall, another character polymorphed them into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I did not remember uploading any T-Rex for my personal art library. So I just punched it in and found out I didn't have any marketplace purchases for one of those either. But luckily I was able to find something powered by the just web search that was built in of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And that's when it became a funny moment, because one of the ones I found was the one that shows the T-Rex where it's like dead. It's like laying on the ground with blood covered on it. And I just slapped that one because I was like, this is what he's going to look like in a couple seconds anyway. And it was pretty funny to everybody involved. But yeah, that's an easy way to find something on the web immediately when you're just on the fly. That is, again, an advantage that you have playing on a virtual tabletop that you aren't able to show your players in real time unless you're someone like Matt Mercer, who just has bags and bags of minis below the table.
I remember them saying that once. Was his house is built out of Dwarven 4.
Yeah, but even that is time consuming, as we're here, you can quickly punch into the search bar and immediately start seeing some results where you can just kind of drag and drop them into your game. So I'm kind of just haphazardly tossing stuff in there as I talk about that. So that is some of the basics, just going over of your art library and things that you may find in there. Let's see here. So next up is the journal. And the journal is a very important area. When you go to your journal, you will have some options when you hit the add button. You can add characters, a handout, or you can create a folder to keep things organized in. Now that doesn't look like a ton of options at first, but what you can essentially do by using this journal is you can build inside of your campaign essentially a campaign Bible that you can show to your players. This can obviously contain things like a player's character that you see here. And we're not going to go too in depth with these options just yet, but here is an area, well, we may as well dive in a little bit. Here's a character. I've invited Slim, and he wants to make a character for this campaign. So up here for the avatar, this is where we want to, maybe he's drawn a picture, maybe he's found a cool image online or had some art made for the character. This is where you want to display that, and that's what's going to show over on the right side that he would be able to see over there. Similarly, when you throw a token down on the map, there is an area underneath the avatar called the default token. This is optional, but what you can do is I can select this bat, for example, and let's size it to 1 square. Let's just say that that's his. Let's say that actually let's actually upload your icon. How about we do that?
Yeah.
So I just dragged and dropped. You can see it uploading now. I just dragged and dropped Rinkaz's token straight onto the map, and there it is. Now, of course, you're going to need to do a little bit of resizing, which you can do using the different boxes on the sides. And again, we'll go over this stuff on the left side more. But there's his token right here. I want to use that as his selected token. That's going to give him full access to that token. He can edit it. He can add health. He can move it around. So all you need to do is click on the token to select it, and then under default token, hit use selected token. There it is. That's him. Over on the right side, you can give him a name. We'll name him Rinkaz because that's who he is. You can choose in which player's journal they show up in. So with all of these handouts, the character list, the handouts themselves, all of these can be shown to everyone, no one, or specific people. Maybe you want to have a bulletin board note that the players find hanging on a bulletin board that everyone sees, and you've created this fun graphic with some text on it. You can show to all players. Maybe it's a specific note telling one of the players that they need to murder or investigate one of the others or interrogate them. You can create that and only show it to a specific player and whisper them and say, hey, you find something in your pockets. This is very akin, and you'll find a lot of these features are akin and have parallels to what you do in real life. So instead of writing down on a sticky note and folding it and trying to secretly hand it off to Slim across the table in real life, I have the ability to slip this in his journal. Only he's going to see it when he logs in under his account, under his journal to look at it. It's going to be there for him. And I can whisper him and just tell him, hey, someone bumps into you and you find something in your pockets, check your journal, and there he'll see his note. He can read it and plan from there. So for this particular piece of content here, this is a character that we've created, so I want this to be available to Rinkaz or Slim so that he can see it. He will have everything that he needs edited or controlled by. I want it to be controlled by Rinkaz. I want him to be able to change the health, move it around, do all cool things. Similarly, like in your art library and your journal, especially once it starts to get filled out, you have the search option at the top. So built into this, along with searching by the name that you've put here at the top, you can also put in tags, player character or lizard folk, things that would help you search and denote what this is when you want to pull it up later. So we're not going to enter any of that stuff. And there's some stuff that is available here to both Rinkaz and Slim as the player, which is his bio and information. Maybe he's crafted a really interesting background for his character, a backstory that he's created that you or him wants to make sure to be able to reference at any time in the campaign. Or maybe he has specific information or quirks about his character that he wants to remember. He can put all of that information there. On top of that, when you are the DM or GM of a game and you're creating any of these handouts or characters, there is always a section for you at the bottom to put your notes. Whether that's this person has a hidden bounty on their heads or something like that. Something for you to remember. So we're going to say Rinkaz has a bounty on him. Now when I save these changes, you'll notice there's a couple different tabs that are available here. And of course, as with most things in this system, this is able to be popped out separate from the actual page here so that you're not having 30 windows on top of one another. There is his bio and info, which we didn't enter anything, so you don't see there. His character sheet that he can fill out. Now, I'm in a campaign that uses Call of Cthulhu, and because of that, it's actually using the Call of Cthulhu sheet. But that's nice because it's largely built into the system if you want to use this to keep track of your character stats and stuff like that. And attributes and abilities, which you can add and play with. Under the bio and info, there's no notes because we didn't put that in there, but there are GM notes that I can always go look and see. And I notice when I go and look at Rinkaz's character in my journal, in the GM notes that only I can see, it says Rinkaz has a bounty on him. So a fun way to keep an ID on that. Character sheet, we're not really going to go over that because that's going to be system specific, but this is where you'd access it if you want to build your character in this game. This is where you can fill those things out and keep track of everything. This is going to be viewable by both your DM, you the player, and anyone else who has access to this. You may want to make, especially if you're building your character sheet in the system itself and only there, you may want to make it available to everyone in the campaign so they can just get an idea of what current things, if you're not too worried about meta knowledge between players. Like for example, I'm happy that all of my players are able to access D&D Beyond, and I'm pretty sure you guys can see each other's character sheets, right?
Yeah, as long as we send them to public. I mean, even in there, I think you're allowed to no matter what, which has been really nice.
That's a great way, for example, if you are trying to stay within the confines of Roll20 to build everything out. It's a great way for your players to just keep track of one another. See what gear they have on them, check their health, things like that. It's also a great way if you're staying within the realms of Roll20. If a player is out and you don't have an alternative way to access their character sheet, it's very easy as the GM to just say, okay, well this session I'm going to go up here to edit, and I'm going to let Bailey have access to this too, so that she can see all the stats that she needs to play your character for this session since you're out. Very nice and easy tools there for you. Now there is attributes that are all here, and this all is stuff that applies that you can build in terms of building out your macros and stuff like that. We're not going to get too detailed on that stuff just yet. We may not even dive too deep into that because I want this to be a pretty surface level explanation. Maybe we'll do a Roll20 for Smarties at some point in the future, but we're just trying to brush the surface to get an understanding. I like to at least create one of these for each of the players, have them a nice little icon. Most of my players from my campaign don't even keep their information part of this system built in here. They actually use D&D Beyond for their actual statistics. But I do like to have a nice full-size piece of art for their characters. Make sure that their token is attached to part of it as we did here. And I also don't mind putting their backstory in the bio and info area. That way, if I ever want to just do a quick read and try and tie some of those threads somewhere into the campaign, I have easy access to that to go take a look at.
I didn't even know you could do all this on that end. Like you were talking about the messages, even to begin with, is interesting because I mean, the game we're in, the first year and a half, we all had crazy stuff going on with our backstories that he would either email us or send us in-game information, and I still feel like some of the characters, there's hidden stuff that we don't even know about each other, which is it adds to the element. And having the bios has been really handy too for a lot of the extra stuff, because there's that item you gave us at the beginning. We each have a special item. I completely forgot the ruling on it because it had been a while, and I was like, crap, where is it? So I've gone back and I've gone even off game time and stream and gone back and read through some of this stuff because there's just so much lore, and I wanted to get charged and ready for the next game and try to go over a few things.
It's a good point that you bring up too. A great example of this in practice is I did the standard trope of giving my characters amnesia for the first season, and they didn't completely forget their complete past lives. They didn't have full amnesia, but a certain section of their lives was they were amnesiac to it and didn't realize that they had these experiences. But as they leveled up, as they got stronger, as they got more experience, they recalled these moments of a previous point in each of their lives that was all interwoven with each of their characters. And so every level that each of my 5-6 characters progressed, each of them got a separate snippet of story that related to their character and sometimes tied into others too. And the characters area is a great way to just keep that all sectioned there. So instead of having to email them or send them a paper with this each level up, you can keep it all collected and kept right there. If all of my players, for example, went back to each of those things that I gave them up through, I think like 7 or 8 levels, they can actually build together a full cohesive story and narrative that happened during their time on Sigil. And if they ever forget any of that, because campaigns specifically are big, there's a lot happening, you find yourselves, as we are here playing them for years, you forget things. And you may even forget important things that happened to your character that, I last read this last year and I just don't remember. It's a great way to keep those things that are character specific housed under the character's piece of the journal that they can reference, and you as the GM.
Which reminds me of something I was going to say earlier. I brought it. I mean, I feel it's almost a valid point. It's, a lot of different people have done tests. A lot of scientists have done tests. People walking into a room. What do you notice? What do you see? What do you remember? He usually starts off with us giving a roll and giving a recap of the game last time. And if we don't remember, either he'll give us a plug-in or we'll plug in the rest of the story as the rest of the players. And honestly, there's been certain... I mean, you've heard me say it, that in character, I feel my character would like these things, but out of character, like these things. There's been so much in the universe now after all these years that there's certain things that I could tell you front to back, the map of this place, where these things are at in the city, and others I'm like, I forgot that planet even existed, because to me, it all makes a great impression, but there's certain things that we've grabbed onto. So I feel like not only through the cohesive story of the messages that you gave us, I feel us as a group of players could remap, the universe in general now, because even without the assets. But it's been nice to go back, like you had said, because I was like, I don't remember that character. Oh, she's a big story character, and I go back and read them, like, oh yeah, here and here. It's it's just a little crazy.
The journal is an extremely helpful tool for players, but I will tell all of you now, if you're the DM/GM, it is essential. If you are planning to build a spanning campaign, something that's in your own world where you're handcrafting it yourself, if you're anything like me, you're going to forget all of that shit. So you're going to want to make sure that you have plenty of notes and things to reference. Because when you're in the middle of the game, players are going to ask you questions and they may not remember themselves, and they'll be like, what was that one place on that world where we went before? And instead of you being like, oh shit, you can immediately roll over to your journal, go into, if you're organized, which is nice to have an organization, I can go into that world that I created and say, oh, that was this bar that that you guys got the note from, or something like that. It is a godsend if you are DMing a game, because it is the place for you to go where it keeps all of your things intact. Along with the characters are the handouts. Folders are pretty self-explanatory. They just create a new folder. You can give it a name. I can say planets in all caps because I'm crazy, and there it is, a separate drop down for planets. But handouts are a little more simplified than the characters. These are multi-purpose journal pieces for you to use. They could be for something as simple as what they give the default name for. Mysterious note is what is always there when you first create a new handout. Let's just roll and say that this is a mysterious note. I want to create a note that has some writing on it and a map. And so here's our mysterious note. As I was mentioning before with my previous example of maybe a secret letter to one of the players, this is where you can, again, similarly to the characters, choose, do I want it in everyone's journals? Do I want it in only mine? Do I want it in only Rinkaz's? You can choose who gets to see it and who doesn't. Typically when I reveal things to my players, I want everyone to see it. There's very little that I have that's player specific, so I generally just choose all players. And of course, similarly, you can always put in here whether you want people to be able to edit or not. And of course, assign tags if you're trying to build a system where it's easily able to be searched for. Now, I have a picture here that I'm just going to slap in there for the picture of what I want this to look like. It's just an image I pulled from the Weird and Wild. There it is. It's got a map and some scribbling on it, and this is something that they find. Description and notes. This map depicts treasure. Winky, smiley face.
Totally wasn't bought by some random vendor out in the desert.
And then, as I mentioned with the characters, similarly, these notes also have GM notes, and I can put this map actually leads to death. Winky, tongue stick out face, and only I see that. So when the players click on something like this, they will see that beautiful image you've uploaded, and then immediately after that, they will also see the text below. Now when you're editing these things, there are plenty of tools here available for you to help format your description and notes, similar to your character bio and info. But because I've used Roll20 in different browsers, I've seen different ticks that it has. And so my best suggestion would be, if it's something that has any amount of detail to it, try to draft it out in a separate program, whether that's Word or maybe just like a Google Doc. Get it ready in there, especially if it has bullet points or some formatting where text is bigger, smaller, bold, and then copy and paste it in here. It'll look beautifully. You will just find that as you try to edit things in here, it's a little touchy and weird. I found that not everything stays as well formatted as I want it to when I'm editing directly in here. But yeah, once you show it to your players, they see this stuff here, and then of course you get to see the secret note that the map actually leads to their deaths underneath. Now, when you've created something like this, let's say that when you have created it, you haven't shown it to everyone yet. For example, just now I went back into editing the mysterious note, and I made sure that it wasn't in any player journals. You'll notice up at the top, now that we have our mysterious note that's available here, but it doesn't have a blue dot next to it over on the right side like Rinkaz does. That blue dot denotes that it's shared with other people. So right now, when Rinkaz goes into the journal section, he can see under characters his character of Rinkaz. He can access that info, he can take a look at it. Nowhere does he see the mysterious note because it's not shared with him yet. A fun way, if you're prepping for a campaign, you want to prep your mysterious note, and this is a session that your characters and players alike are going to find it. When you're ready, when they come across it, you're going to go over to your journal, click your mysterious note. At the top, you're going to see this similar edit, but you're also going to see the show to players. You're going to click on that, and it's going to give you a little pop-out box that says, hey, this handout isn't currently shared with anybody. Are you sure you want to show it to everyone now? And that's kind of to give you a, hey, just making sure you're about to show this to everyone. So if you're not ready, don't do it. But I can usually do that. Once you do that, for any other players, for example, with Slim on his screen now, it is going to pop up for him right on his screen. So it's an easy way to get everyone's attention and say, as Rinkaz digs through the piles of scrolls, he finds this mysterious note. And then you show to the players and it pops right up for him. Not only that, but you'll now notice at the top right under our notes, in our journal, the mysterious note now has a blue dot, meaning that it is shared with other people now. It is visible to them. And you can always change this later. If you're like, this was important, but the players haven't been to this place in a long time, but I don't want to get rid of it because they may go back sometime, or I may want to, as a DM, reference this later. You can remove it so it's not jumbling up and filling. It's not too much notes for the players to keep track of and too much garbage. You can remove it from them and just keep it available to you. So something interesting that you can share with people and stuff like that.
Or a thief comes along and steals it, and you hope that the players took time to take a look at it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, on top of all of this, you can build anything you want. I created a mysterious note, but this could easily be, for example, on my campaign of Weird and Wild, this could be a list of the NPCs that the characters know. This could be a list along with picture references of places that they've been to before, the cities that they've gone and visited, as well as information that includes maybe the important people of that place, the shops. That can all be kept within here, and you can actually build out, although it just says journal, that's essentially what it is. It's your campaign Bible. You can build out a full system here that both you and your players can reference. If your players or you are interested in viewing something like this later, they can also pop in. Once they log into Roll20, they'll see the campaigns that they have access to. For example, I can click Weird and Wild Season 2. Or more importantly, let's go back and go Black Sun Suite, because this is the one we're currently playing around in. You'll see who the owner is, who players are in. Rinkaz is currently a part of this. You can launch the game, you can add people if you want. Under content, if you want to just look at your campaign Bible as a player DM, but you don't want to log into the actual map and let everything load, under content, you can just see both the chat archive or an external journal. And when you click the external journal, it's not going to keep things in that nice tidy folder system that you have in your campaign, but it is going to place everything alphabetically. So you will see here, we don't even have to be actually inside of the Black Sun Suite campaign to be able to view this note. We can see it right here. So that's an easy way. You know, maybe you're just wanting to go back through the lore and find out what stuff you as characters have come across, but you don't want to jump in directly to the Roll20 game. This is a great way to do it.
Which This may be obvious to a lot of people, but I was trying to reference something to a few of my players and give them a reference to some of the stuff that happened in our game. And I pulled it up on my phone and I was like, oh, by the way, I still have access to everything here. I know mobile's just very similar to, the internet. It's all tied together. But if you guys don't have a PC and you can only access via phone, say you're on the go or something, I know it sounds a little cliche, but honestly, there's been one or two times that, you know, I haven't been able to make a game and I was able to at least hop in through there, say a couple things real quick, or make a couple in character decisions. And I mean, it sounds goofy, but it helped quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an easy way to be able to access that stuff without necessarily having access to a computer and sitting right there at an actual desktop trying to do these things. You still have the opportunity to be able to pop in and play. Absolutely. There's been a couple sessions where I think, not too many, but one or two where Kevin has not even been home, but has still been able to, using his phone, jump in and just use his phone as his video camera and play through that way. And we could see him, and he still maybe not. He may have instructed us to move his token, but he had full access to be able to play. So,
which is another thing when you're talking about the tokens. There's been many times that we've had to, play for a friend because a friend or a party member hasn't been able to make it and they trust us enough to be able to run around as us, or you're mind controlled by that player, or like it's happened to us, I think on 3 occasions, we've swapped bodies at times, and he's been able to give access to another player for my token and vice versa. So when we need to, that, anybody can move the NPC, but your specific player character, that's actually been really beneficial.
yeah, if you find that Slim has to be out for a session and Bay wants to take over, not only do you show if you have built the character sheet in this system, not only could you edit that to give her access, but you could also specifically go to the token itself and go to the options here and give access. And we'll go over the tokens and all of these things you see here in a bit more in depth, but those are definitely tools that you can use. I think we'll do, what do you think, like 2-hour sessions?
Yeah, I was going to say, we're just about to hit 10 now, so I feel like we got a huge chunk of this, but there's still so much more. I mean, just in the toolbar, there's so many things we can cover on this.
Yeah.
I think that's probably pretty.
So one of the things that I do want to cover going forward for the next time that we do some Roll20 for Dummies is we've covered half of the toolbar at the top on the right side. So you've learned some of the broad tools at your fingertips that Roll20 offers. You've been able to create your own campaign. If you haven't, go ahead and do it now and take a look at the different options that it gives you when you do. You're able to log in to your campaign and have a basic knowledge of some of the things that you're seeing. We didn't go over too much of what you're visually seeing on the left side, but I want to go over more of the deeper content that you should be thinking about over on the right side, because you're always going to have a different map. You're always going to be moving tokens around on the left side. That's going to always be dynamic. But on the right side, it's almost more important because you're always going to be referencing your characters. You're always going to want to be referencing your journal notes. You're always going to be wanting to have a place where you access, look at, and use tokens at. So that is, to me, a more important area than the left side of the map, because that is your core of what you're doing for your campaign. And we covered half of those. Next session, we're going to go over the jukebox, which is pretty simple to go through. We're going to very lightly go over macros, and then we're going to touch on some of the things that you can set in your settings area. And then from there, we're actually going to dive deep on the actual map itself. We're going to go over the 3 different layers. Actually, I take that back. The 4 different layers. We're going to go over some of the tools in the toolbar. We're going to go over the page toolbar and creating different maps and changing those sizes. We're going to do a couple of those different things. So I know this may have not dove in too deep, but I really want to give everyone a broad idea of going over some stuff in terms of getting them acquainted with Roll20, especially if this is your first time and you never used it before, and making sure you have an idea instead of jumping straight into a campaign. So now you have a proper understanding of some of the things like the marketplace, the compendiums that exist outside of being inside of this actual Roll20 system built here. And from here we'll dive in. We'll definitely get more into the meat of actually throwing down some fun art for maps and tokens, moving things around, changing things from one layer to another, and we'll have some fun with that. So if you guys enjoyed this, I think it's gonna probably be same time next week. Slim, what do you think? Same time next week, 8 o'clock?
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Okay. We'll come back next week. I'll make sure and rep it both on our Friday night stream as well as on our Twitter and stuff like that. And if you are looking to see some of the stuff that you saw here or explained in action, come hang out with us Friday night and watch our D&D game. Check it out. It's a homebrew campaign set in a unique plane that's a mixture of Spelljammer and Planescape. Those two settings sort of fucked and had a baby. And so you can check that out. And it's wacky, it's weird, it's a lot of fun, it's upbeat, sometimes it's scary and crazy, other times it's emotional, but it's a fun ride. I really enjoyed it. And you can see a lot of these things in action when you come take a look. You can see a lot of the stuff that I use for the marketplace tools that I've thrown in there. You can see some things moving back and forth between the hidden layers. You can see the dynamic lighting in action. Let's see. Hero says, for the custom companion reward for your stream, mind going into a little bit of detail for that? Yes. I basically, if you have enough weird bits to use the points that you built up, and just as a quick broad point to anyone else who's enjoyed watching the stream and may or may not have taken a look at our Friday night D&D, but you guys accrue points as you watch because we use the Twitch channel points. And a lot of that is largely for our Friday night campaign. So you can buy things like inspiration for the party. You can even, for pretty cheap, buy them a +1 that they can use. So there's a lot of fun ways for you guys to interact with the party that gives them bonuses, gives them boons. You could give me inspiration cards and see what I can do to make things more difficult or complicated and throw them more difficulties and things to overcome. A lot of fun things. One of those rewards is the custom companion card. Basically what happens with that, heroes, is if you have enough points to buy it, I will work with you and we will create a custom companion. And what that is in my homebrew game, the players and their characters at different locations in the Twix plane have the opportunity to go to a place called the Helper's Hand. And this basically has what are called companions, although in the game world they're called hands because they're part of the Helper's Hands Guild. They are not full adventurers, but they're not mercenaries either. They're a little above just standard take coin and do whatever. They generally want to help out adventurers, but they don't want the danger that comes with being an adventurer themselves. So they're willing to help a hand out to adventurers and assist them. And so what that translates to in technical terms is they are not a actual fully statted NPC. They are an NPC that has their own personalities and stuff that can follow the party, but they take damage differently, they operate differently, and have a little bit of a difference in terms of following the characters. It's a little less difficult for them to find themselves in precarious situations and end up dying. It's almost like a nice option for the players to have someone following along, like a follower. For example, Rinkaz is a gunslinger. He doesn't have access to magic, but he very well could have the opportunity to use magic if he found someone in the Helper's Hand that he was to pay the money or whatever price they may be looking for, and then he will have access to use them to be able to have them cast a spell, or some characters he can expend his own inspiration to have them use a trigger a cool ability or something like that. So for the custom companion reward, you essentially work with me with an idea of what you want, art that you may have in mind, whether you supply it or we find it to create this custom companion, and we'll come up with that for the characters. And next time they visit the Helper's Hand Guild, that character will have a priority for them to take a look at. Now, I full admittance, I cannot, with absolute assurance, say that the players are going to pick your character, because I don't force them to do any of that. It's still their free will. But usually, we've only had one before, and that was from another long-time follower and someone who checks us out, Looney. He created a character, and everyone knew, so they played along and invited him. So if that's something you want to look into, you can create your own character with their own name and their own identity and their own cool little abilities, and have them actually appear in the game and join the other party members for a couple adventures. Maybe they stick around. It all depends on how things play out. So something to look into. And of course, if you buy that reward or want to DM me and have more questions, I can help try and go over that stuff with you.
Yeah, Hero's been a little privy to some of that because I've adapted a little bit of that system to the game I'm running with him. It's been a very valuable asset to use for story and NPC characters that I want to drag along that aren't, they can take a few hits, but they're not going to be, generic old woman in house that needs, you to find her sheep or something. She can follow around now.
Yeah.
It's been very useful.
It's yes, especially as a DM. The less shit I have to reference, the better. So that is why I absolutely love custom companions, because I don't even have to worry about looking over even just like a creature stat block for them. It's just some very basic abilities, and they have some very basic rules in terms of when they themselves take damage, what they can do to assist the other players and stuff like that. It's a wonderful asset. It's a really awesome thing. I didn't come up with it myself. That was a piece of content that is found on the DM's Guild. And let me try and link you to that now, actually. Let's take a look here. I think I sent it over to you too, Slim. Let's see.
Yeah, I was looking over it. I got a little inspiration and idea for a few of the ones I was working on. I was going to say, before we wrap things up, at any point, do you happen to have your or my or anybody's Twitter handles available? So, or any other social media platforms in case they want to ask us any more questions outside of here.
Yeah, absolutely. I posted the link to the actual DM's Guild PDF that I base my companion stuff off of, Heroes, if you want to take a look at that. And I use most of those rules too. Yeah, as we wrap up here, thank you everybody for tuning in. I kind of went into a diatribe of our own personal stuff, but I mean, we're showcasing some of this, so I'd love for you guys, if you enjoyed this tutorial, give us a follow, hang out with us. You can keep up to date with us on Twitter, and my Twitter is aptly named similar to our Twitch here. It's JWD_mode. You can find, do you want to do yours, Slim? You can just rep whatever, your own personal one or the husband and wife.
Yeah, that's fine. Mine's just Surge for the Win, SURGE, the number 4 TW. That's my personal one. It's the same as my Twitch handle, but the other one's the husband and wife stream one. Under if you guys ever want to bug either of us, I know at least for me, I mean, just talk D&D or anything, just let me know.
Yeah, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to have shown this stuff to you, Hero. If you have any other questions that pop up in your mind, or those of you who missed this live stream but are still checking out the VOD on Twitch or the re-upload on YouTube, and you have questions, throw them in the comment section. Hit me up on Twitter. Or even, I mean, I'm fine to even just get messaged as a DM on Twitch if you have extra questions. Those would be great things for me to either directly answer or to just answer in the next stream and go over that with you if it's something more in depth and I want to make sure and showcase it. So hit us up on there. You can see all of those things, at least in terms of the God Mode stuff, down below on our stream. But yeah, check out Husband and Wife stream. They do a lot of variety of games, a lot of Animal Crossing right now because a lot of people are having fun with that. Check them out, and I think maybe eventually you may be, what do you think, Slim, once you get a grapple of this, maybe doing your own D&D game on Roll20?
Yeah, like I said, I'd really like to invite a couple people who've been uh, following us on our channel for a while because I know a few of them play or don't have the access to play and have really wanted to. And I still want to do one with you. I'm thinking I'll do in the future a couple one shots with, a couple of games in tow for it, and maybe further down the line I'll get my buddy Hero and a few of you guys, and we'll dive into one of the millions of things I've written down in my brain. Literally looks like the aliens guy, the conspiracy theory guy. It's insane up there.
Oh shit. Uh, Heroes is ready. Well, yeah, guys, we're gonna come back next week. We're gonna dive deeper into the Roll20 system. It's not hard, like I said. I'm sure the things that I've gone over, there may have been plenty of things that you didn't necessarily catch on to at first glance, but it's all pretty intuitive. And even if you don't pick up everything, or if I didn't explain everything at first, just going through and clicking buttons, which is what I did to figure things out, you'll pick up a lot of stuff. So like I said, hit us up in between this stream and next week's if you have any further questions. I think everyone's Twitch page has updated to the new layout. So you should be able to keep an eye out in terms of our schedule, because something everyone I think was screaming for was just an actual, like built-in way for people to see a streamer's schedule that didn't have to have us crafting our own little panels for it. That's built in now, which is really nice. So you can take a look at that if you forget when we stream, but it's going to be next week, same time, same place, Tuesday at 8 p.m. around this time, Eastern time. So come check us out, hang out with us, ask more questions, and this will be uploaded on the video on demand and our YouTube at GOWD_mode. Check it out there. Give us a follow if you want. Go check us out on Twitter, as Slim mentioned. Go follow him at Surge for the Win, and throw us some questions if you have any. But other than that, that's everything we have for tonight. So anything else, Slim?
Not on my end. Thank you guys for coming by.
Yeah, thank you everybody for stopping by, especially Heroes. I really appreciate you hanging out and interacting with us. If you have any friends or anybody else, either of you guys, if you have anybody who is wanting to dig into a digital virtual system like this and needs to figure things out, bring them on by. There's plenty of videos and stuff like that people can watch on Roll20, but I think even though we're a much smaller and maybe not even as in-depth broadcast as some of those things, we at the very least have more of a one-on-one with you guys. So if you have a specific question that one of those YouTube videos didn't answer, then just throw it at us and we'll either let you know or try and figure it out in real time so that we can make sure and get those questions answered for you. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you, Slim, for hanging out and going over some of this stuff. We'll definitely dig into more next week. And yeah, we'll be back next week. Goodbye, everybody.